Welcome this evening to the annex of FiND 3. This is our indoor recreation area. The main building, obviously, is where all our learning rooms and facilities are. So we've crammed as many seats as we possibly can in to accommodate you all, because, of course, these talks are becoming so popular now. This is Peter Oakes. Peter's a psychologist that supports us at FiND, because I think we all need it. And basically, I'm going to hand over to Peter, but just before I do, long story, but we're filming it, basically, because there's quite a few people who couldn't come, who really wanted to see it, so we're filming it. If anybody really objects, just stand by the door, but it's only the back of your head, so I'm sure it'll be fine. Yeah. Oh, yes, do it. Thank you. Right. I'll leave you in the
Right, welcome. Well, no pressure then. We're on film. Back of my head's basically the same as the front. Never mind. And also pressure, because then a whole bunch of professionals have just walked in late as well. Fantastic. They all know their stuff. So, yeah, that's a bit of a concern. But it's going to be fine, isn't it? This is part 2. Who was here for part 1? Oh, so, yeah, 30%, nearly, yeah, about half. Okay, so we're going to recap a little bit, and just to explain to some of the others what we've done up to now. And then, yeah, we'll take it from there. So, yeah, I'm a clinical psychologist. My main, my kind of real job, if you like, and my day job is running the clinical psychology training course at the university in Hull. And the best part of my week is the day a week that I spend supporting the people that come to FiND, either here or over in Beverley. And so, yeah, and I've always worked alongside people with learning disabilities, and have watched that kind of progress develop since a long time ago. I won't say how long, because then you'll just spend the whole time trying to work out how old I am. It's very old. I'm very old. Okay, we've got, brains, blames and gobbledygook is the title tonight. So we're going to think a bit about brains. We're going to think a bit about how sometimes people end up getting blamed for things that really aren't their fault. And also, I want to try, if we can, to unravel some of the gobbledygook and nonsense that is around, and the long words and the sort of jargon, and hopefully speak in fairly plain English about some of the things that concern us all. That's one of the kind of main purposes, I think, of these sorts of evenings, is just try to speak in plain English. So if anybody spots me not speaking in plain English, you are very welcome to stick up a hand and say, what? Did that mean anything? Throughout the talk, you'll find little bits. There's some gobbledygook there that you need to spot, and just call out if you see some. That's always good. And also some pictures of real people, which hopefully, if you're bored, there'll be a nice picture of some disabled people at various points that you can just watch and remember how brilliant they are. Okay? So that's the setting, what we're going to do. Here's the plan. We're going to recap very slightly for those of you that didn't come to part 1. I'm sorry, the option is to have the lights off. Do you want to try that? Is that better? Okay. Oh yeah, actually we can all see each other. Yeah? Well, that's much better for all of us. That means, we really won't know whose head it's the back of when this is on YouTube or something. Okay. We're going to talk a bit about these things called, there's already, syndromes and phenotypes. I'm going to say what that is, or try to say what that might be. We're going to talk about some questions that people with disabilities might be asking of us, and some of the answers, some ways of looking at them. And then, for me, the most important answer, the thing that we need to get right for people. And if we get that right, all the other stuff follows. All right, so that's the plan. We'll be about an hour, but there'll be a chance to do other things during it, hopefully. And we've got some fairly ridiculous illustrations that may or may not work. So hopefully it'll keep you interested. And then there'll be a chance for some questions at the end. Okay. Where we started, the very first question that a lot of families wanted to know about or wanted to think about was, how do our brains kind of influence or make things happen, make us behave in certain ways? What goes on in the brain that brings about how we are and what we do? why do we do what we do? And people particularly wanted to understand that in respect of the brain. So we just had a little run around that, and the scale and beauty and complexity of the human brain is just extraordinary. Okay, so there are 75 billion neurons in a human brain, unnumbered connections between them. The variety and complexity of it is just extraordinary, and that is the case for every human being on this planet. Not only are there different connections that make a difference to how we are, but also those connections can be run by some chemicals or another chemical. So imagine the variety that comes about from all those permutations, all those possibilities. And it means that our brains enable us to be, everybody here at the moment is happily, hopefully, digesting their tea. They're not thinking that, no, you're not, no, you haven't any tea. No.
No, I haven't yet.
Who's had tea that they're actually, yes. Some people have had some tea that they're happily digesting. Some of them are ignoring the little signs saying, I could do with some tea. I wish I had a bag of chips or whatever. We're running systems, we're keeping our temperature right. We're processing all sorts of chemicals around our blood. We're doing all that, keeping our hearts beating. Hopefully everybody's heart's beating so far. No sign of that not happening, even though it's going to get warm. So that all goes on, and we don't have to think about it, thankfully. Otherwise, we would be constantly just thinking about all of that. But it also enables us to find things funny, to laugh at things. It makes us and enables us to decide we want to do something. If you have this computer does not want to be here. Believe me, it's not interested. It's doing what it's told. Computers, however complex and amazing they are, never want to do what you ask them to do. They just do it. Human beings want to do things. That's the one thing that pulls us out from all of machines. None of us are machines. We're amazing human beings. All people are. Everybody that comes to FiND is also an amazing human being. Enables us to be curious and caring and loving. Enables us to have fun. And part of it somehow enables us to give this infinite capacity for love. That you can't use love up. Those of you who've had the experience of having more than one child may know this, in that you think when you've had one child, that's it. I can't imagine loving anything more than that. And then the second one comes along, and you somehow do just as much again. People that come here and care for people that look after people, that doesn't get used up in my view either. There are those things that just can grow infinitely. All from the human brain that produces these massive differences between us. And everybody here is hugely different from everybody else, and we talked about that a bit more last time. Some of the differences between people we end up calling disability, because life is complicated out there. Okay? And so some of the differences, and these are the ones that tend to be the differences that make up learning disabilities, right? And differences in how people learn. Some people find it harder to process information quickly. So following things quickly, managing quickly to do things, is a difference that is part of having a learning disability. Being able to solve problems, hold one bit in your mind while you sort out something else, managing lots of information in at one time is another difference between us. We're all different in that way. But if it's really difficult for us, then we can't cope with everyday life, and we're called disabled. Communication is a difference between us. Some of us are very effective at communicating, use words really well, able to communicate very quickly and sharply. Other people find it more difficult. And again, if you really struggle to learn words at all, then that difference becomes a disability. We're all different in those ways, but they just become a disability when it's hard to cope with everyday life. And remembering things. Who here is good at remembering names? Nobody ever thinks they are. Actually, there's a conspiracy somewhere. You know, because I don't think anybody is actually good at remembering. Is there any teachers here? You're a teacher. How long does it take you to learn a class full of names then? It would take me about 10 years. It takes you a long time. It's still, still hard to remember, absolutely. It is really difficult, isn't it? Remembering things is a difference between us. I'm dreadful on names. And of course, then I worry about remembering someone's name, which makes it even less likely that I'll remember their name. And so on and so on and so forth. But some people really find it hard to remember things in everyday life that you actually need to be able to remember. And again, that difference becomes a disability because of the way we make our world. And that's what learning disability is. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, good. Okay. So, I do need to use these opportunities for a bit of therapy, if that's all right. And you are my therapists, okay? How many people here are from Yorkshire? Fantastic. Oh, yes. Some very proud hands. Do you see some of the hands where, I bloody am? Yes, there's definitely some proud hands went up there. Yeah. Well, you see, I'm a bit confused because I was born in Middlesbrough. Okay, now that's York. Is that allowed to be Yorkshire even when we were in Hull? Yeah?
It's not in Yorkshire.
Is Middlesbrough not in Yorkshire?
Of course it's not.
What's it in then?
Middle.
No, it's Teesside.
North Teesside. No, that's like Humberside. That doesn't do. Oh, so no, I'm really. Anyway, I thought I was born in Yorkshire. My dad, who's from Middlesbrough proper, would definitely say he was a Yorkshire. Anyway, but then when I was 4, of all places, they moved to Surrey. I know. It was simply lovely. It really was. And I went to grammar school in Surrey. I know, exactly. Right. And then in 1990, well, we then moved around, all around the south, Portsmouth, all those places, right? Okay. And then we moved up to Yorkshire, here, proper Yorkshire. This is proper Yorkshire. We're in Yorkshire, yeah, good. Okay. That was 1994, 20 years ago, this year. So, does that make me a Yorkshireman or not? No, didn't think so.
In another 20 years.
What are in another? Who said in another 20 years over here? What are the characteristics of a Yorkshireman then?
Born and bred.
Born and bred. What was that over? What was the joke over here? Tight. Okay. Any other things that are characteristics? What was that? What did you say? Chewing straw? Yeah, I definitely don't think that's a very random answer. Anything else? I think she's further north actually. I need some more. Grumpy, flat cat, whippets. Okay, right. Beer. Proud. Any positive things? Yeah? Generous. Okay. And friendly. And blunt. Yeah, straightforward, maybe, and a bit more positive. Okay. So we have these kind of images. So any of the Yorkshire, anybody who considers themselves, would you consider yourself a Yorkshireman? Would you accept all of these phrases that have been described of you? You would? Every single, marvellous. That's ruined the whole thing. Anybody would say, my sense is that not every Yorkshireman is the same. Is that? Yeah. But we have a kind of rough idea of what we mean by a Yorkshireman. Yeah. Okay. It's funny how we have these groups of people and we put characteristics to them. And they're often based on something, not sure what, but we have these groups and we put characteristics on them. And some people really fit with them, some people don't fit with them. Some people fit 100% with the entire characteristic. Some people fit maybe 5% with it. And usually when you try to kind of put those groups together, they end up with that sort of thing. And we're going to come on to some of the groups that we put together around learning disability and to think about that as we go on. Okay. So, there's a little gobbledygook spot for you. I found that. That's good, isn't it? What? I can make a window to discuss your interactive transitional concepts.
Well, Windows is time.
I had no idea. It shouldn't be allowed, should it? If you go to the Plain English Society website, you'll find lots of these. They're absolutely amazing. They're real things. They're real. They've been found in places.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to. There's some more kind of gobbledygook. Don't worry about being able to read all of this. But I wanted you to kind of realise that there's an awful lot of work that's done to kind of say this is what we know about this group of people. People with autism, for example, or people with Down syndrome, or people with different groups in learning disability. Okay, and lots of scientists and lots of researchers have looked into this and all tried to identify what it means when we say somebody is autistic. And just by looking over in the last couple of weeks over some scientific journals, just to see where we got to with all of this was really interesting. One big problem with autistic, ASD by the way, that's autistic spectrum disorder. Don't know why it's called disorder. Never. Anyway, but yeah. And there we have in the red. I've just put in the red. Individuals may meet criteria because they have not yet reached the developmental level required for a behaviour to be achieved. So what they're saying there, all right, is that we might think somebody fits the criteria for having autism or being autistic or being on the autistic spectrum. What it actually means is that they have got to a developmental point that they're in their growth as a person that is the same as autism, but that's the reason why they're there. So it's actually, we're never quite sure what is going on about that. Because it could be that that's just where the person's got to developmentally, or it could be that that's how they are. Does that make sense? Some nodding, yeah, it is. Yeah, I'll go on to some more. The stuff at the end is about that even the groups, the kind of proper assessments. The ADOS is one that is said to be gold standard, doesn't really distinguish between the people that are just kind of growing that way and the other people that are going to be like that, and that's how they are. Which is quite interesting in itself. So we've got to watch these groups, and we've got to watch the science. If people try to blind you with science, always find out, or come to somebody. There's a few people here, certainly always come to me, and ask any question you want about this. Because the scientists might have you believe that they know more than they do. That's all I would say. Okay? Because it helps their careers too. Helps my career if I say I know everything. Yeah. And there's another one. There's another load of stuff written in there. Look at that word. Dimensionalisation. What is that? What that actually means, I think, is that we've moved from saying you're not in this box or you are in this box. We've moved to saying that you're somewhere along the spectrum on a dimension. Right? And what that means is that it's really hard to know where you say, right, I'm at this point where I am now, autistic. That's made the research even more difficult for people, because you don't know where you are. Whether you can't say I'm in this box, therefore I can be researched and understood as in this box. We can't do that. So it complicates everything. Try not to lose you here, but I'm just hope. Yeah, does that make sense? So we've got to watch the science here. We really have to be careful, and that's one of the purposes of this sort of session, to try to untangle what we actually know. There's a little bit of nonsense. No, I can't actually work out what that means. But that's better, isn't it? Look. I'll just let you enjoy that for a minute. Brilliant. I like the guy in the background as well. I want to meet him. Anyway. Okay. I think this is what all this means. When we say we're not quite sure what we mean, and a bit like at least some Yorkshiremen, even if the person is, we are clear, they're still not going to be the same as everybody else. Okay? And it's easy to get a bit mixed up with people who generally just have learning difficulties and develop at different speeds. And even the very well-designed test divide it on the basis of their own tests. So they're they can't really be sure. Is that okay? I hope that that seems important that we know that, because autism and spectrum, it's such a big issue for us all here, and it's a growing issue. So we just need to put our foot on the ball and think about it a bit. Okay. These are some of the things that, from my impression, actually reading the stuff that's written, that it's worth remembering, and worth remembering about people generally, actually, that these are some of the difficulties that people have and that we need to help with. Some people find it really hard, and we meet people like this, to kind of get that I'm experiencing basically the same thing that you're experiencing, and really hard to read that you're experiencing the same thing as I am. Okay? And I'm trying to think about a good example of that. So, I mean, the classic example is no, that's too complicated. There's a sense in which, like, if you're sharing an experience with somebody else, all right, you know roughly what that other person is experiencing, and people talk about mind reading. You can imagine how that other person is thinking and feeling at this time. You can't get it completely right, but you just have a sense of what's going on, that you share this experience. And some people find that hard. They are so focused on their own experience, or so overwhelmed by other things, that they can't kind of work out that you and they are sharing something. And you see that in people. You see that in people. Actually, you might see that in Paula Radcliffe when she's running, funnily enough. Do you know how Paula Radcliffe runs? She runs by fixing on a spot. Must be so boring. She runs like 200 miles a week, right? She runs 200 miles a week, and she never looks where she's going, other than at a fixed spot in front of her. And she keeps a rhythm and count. And that's the same sort of thing. She doesn't have that experience. Very weird. Very weird. Okay. People seem to find it hard to communicate, perhaps because they're not sure what's going on for the other person. So can't read what's happening. That seems to be something that we see in a number of people, and a number of people who've attracted this word autism in the last few decades. Being able to communicate how I feel and what's going on for me in a way that makes sense to you, and tuning in to how you communicate to me. Then actually we all need a little bit of help. We all have ways of managing things that makes us anxious, don't we? And so we've all got little routines and little things that we do that make us, when we're a bit worried, we know what to do, and we do those things, and we just have those little rituals and routines. Some of them we could tell other people, some of them we possibly couldn't. Most of them perhaps we couldn't. We've got these little things, haven't we? We know they are. We know what they are that we do, and we just feel a bit better. If we're anxious, we feel a bit better when we've done them. We're managing anxiety all the time. I'm managing anxiety massively at the moment, believe me. The way I do it is I imagine all evening I've imagined myself at 9:30 tonight with a glass of wine sitting in the sofa, right? And I've got this thing saying, and then all this thing that's been obsessing me for weeks, trying to get this stuff in a way that makes sense to you lot, it will be, well, I've done it or not, but it will be done. And so I have that kind of way of dealing with that. and also manically preparing things. And it seems that some people have some sensory. I can understand this a little bit, because if I'm very stressed, noises really get to me, and I need to be away from noise if I'm very stressed. Some people I know, in fact, ironically, my daughter, if she's stressed, she loves noise everywhere. So that's not good when we're both stressed, believe me. But there's something about noises, especially when you're stressed, can make you even more stressed. And maybe I'm even really sensitive to noise. Other people maybe need touch or find touch very difficult. Some people have really sharp senses of taste, so that even a tiny bit of a flavour is really, really too much for them. Other people have to eat the hottest curry in the world to kind of just to experience it with the taste. So we've all got that, and for some people that is really important. And those, for me, seem to be the sorts of things that we often end up talking about when somebody is thinking about autism and Asperger's. There's other things as well. The communication is very wide, often quite social thing as well. But yeah. So that is helpful for me. That sort of stuff, having an idea that might be going on for someone is helpful. So we can then start working out what we need to do to help somebody. We don't have to buy too much of the kind of gobbledygook to remember these straightforward things and to try to get them right. Look at those two. Yeah. Amazing. You want to be there, don't you, rather than here? Sorry. I think it's raining, by the way. You'll be swimming out. Okay. There are some other syndromes that actually we are more sure of, because you can look at a person and look at their blood and all those sorts of things and see them. And there's a whole list. These are some that come up around quite a lot. Down syndrome always used to be the main group of people with learning disabilities, really, until autism came along. I think autism's overtaken it, which is interesting. And these are the ones that you might come across. And some of those have things that you tend to notice in people. I'm going to stop talking a minute. You're going to do something. I thought it was sooner that we'd get to something interesting for you, but it won't be long, I promise. Have that. That's a victory, isn't it, for someone with an intellectual disability, with a learning disability? Yeah. Down syndrome, there are some things that, because you can identify very clearly who has Down syndrome and who doesn't, you can actually do a lot more work than you can in other things. And so that means it's easier for a person if they can see rather than listen to something. A child with Down syndrome will learn to speak much better if you actually teach them to read. And so in very early work with young children with Down syndrome, it's a good idea to teach and always have something visual for people, because they really do process visual information much more quickly. Some won't, of course, don't forget, some won't, but that's been found really quite widely. And generally, even if a person can't speak very clearly, they are quite likely to be able to understand listening, even though words and auditory stuff is hard. And so tend to be better at listening than talking. And as I say, we really could do with a few more people like that, I think. And so again, we don't assume just because someone can't speak clearly and use language that they're not understanding all the time. You can check understanding. There's no need to make assumptions. It's good to kind of know those sorts of things. And Prader-Willi syndrome, I don't know if any of you have come across that. It's something familiar to some people. I love this. They really, again, as a group of people, seem much better at doing lots of things at once. So sequential, one at a time, is really hard for some people. I really like sequential. Other people find it much easier to have a lot going on, and actually can take in a lot and enjoy settings where there's lots going on. Some people can't bear that. And so you can imagine, if you those sorts of things, if you have got those things, and then you're going to get stressed, aren't you? If you everything's happening to you one at a time, and actually you prefer it to be different to that, eventually you'll get stressed, and then you'll start causing trouble, and then on we go. The stuff about food, I've met many people with Prader-Willi syndrome who have trouble with food, but no more than quite a few other people I know. It tends to be, oh, that's what that one means. But actually, it needn't be the be-all and end-all for somebody. And sometimes, because we expect it so much for somebody, then that's what we get. And we have to be really careful about that kind of thing. And I was last week in Reading. I was down in Reading with a woman with Prader-Willi syndrome. And yes, we couldn't bring a big tray full of chocolate biscuits into the room to the coffee break. That wouldn't have been helpful for her. But that was all. There wasn't, we didn't have to focus on that all the time. She was amazing. She was completely relaxed about all of that. Okay. And here's another bit of stuff. I love this. This is a way of saying, hold it. I love this. If you look at this, there appears to be a need to recognise that an individual with a syndrome may conform to the behaviour, may do these things that people with that thing do, all right? In some domains, like sometimes, or in some areas, but also may differ from. And that's, so, like we all are. Okay? So it's helpful, it gives us guide, it might give us questions to ask and to think about. But in the end, you've got to remember this. Okay. So, time I stop talking, we're going to have a bit of a break, and I want to have a chat to somebody and find out from them whether they belong to any group. All right? It could be that they're a salsa dancer. I think there are some of those here. They could be a football fan or a whatever. Find out what group that somebody near you belongs to, and the ways that they are typical of that group, and the ways that they're not. All right? Have a chat. Right, that's perked everybody. There's one more thing we need to do. Now, this might be slightly difficult, and if you're not able to do it, then that is obviously completely fine. But as part of keeping our concentration going, see, it's waning over there, a bit of a yawn gone on over there. So as part of keeping our concentration going is we need to stand up and turn around 3 times and sit down again. So just kind of, yeah, there we go.
I'm not turning my head. I'm dizzy.
Fantastic. Right. Okay, so this is the sort of thing I've said this before. It's not my line. I think it was Francesca Happe who said it, so she knows everything about autism. And do people know the next? So when you have met one person with autism,
You don't know what it is.
yeah, you've no idea what it is. Yeah, like that. Any other? You've met one person with autism, absolutely. And we're going to keep saying that. We are going to keep saying that. And just in case. And actually, I slipped into a way, because you also hear that they do this, they do that. And I found myself, when we were talking, I was saying about people with Down syndrome, they do that. It's very distant. You've got to watch that. Really got to watch that. They do that. When you hear the word they, it always worries me. So yeah, I must apologise for that, because it was a slip. And was aware of it, couldn't correct it in time. Yeah. Okay, we're going to come on a bit now to one way, anyway, of thinking about how people develop and how their behaviour develops, all right? And we're going to have a really slightly... Anyway, we'll see if it works. We've got an illustration involving bulbs and things. Okay, so this is a bit of a... Okay. So one way of looking at this that I've been working on with these people in Reading, funnily enough, and that is the kind of what develops towards how we are, all right? And where we begin is a bit like the roof. So this, look, here we are. Anybody see what this is? It's a bulb. It's a bulb, and just in the little top there, actually, is a tiniest little shoot getting ready to be, and I'm going to have to put it in the garden when I get back in the garden, and hopefully it will come up and be something nice. Okay, and these are the kind of so this is the sort of where we start with the kind of root of the core of who we are, and that's our basic personality, and I've got some things I'll come back to that. The relationships that we are in makes us, that kind of constructs who we are. The disability, the stuff we've been talking about, how our brains are and our bodies are and all that kind of stuff, that's part of it. And also the community we're in. Those are the sort of main things that kind of where we start, if you like. They're the kind of, and the disability is one of them, but it's not the only one. It also is about the relationships that you kind of start in. Your basic personality and temperament, the sort of person that you are. And also the community that you belong to. And what the issues are for that community. All right? So that's the kind of, got that? Right, okay. And then that begins to grow. And becomes takes its shape, if you like. So we've got this already in our garden. I'm a bit worried. Yeah, anyway. So it's still actually, I bet you got much better ones in yours. It's actually, now I look at it, it's a bit pathetic. Anyway, it seemed all right in the darkness when I was digging it up before I came down here. But I think, you begin to see a bit more of the shape of this, growing from the roots. Some of the strengths that a person has. And some of the kind of humour, things that sort of, I do think the kind of things that make people laugh and so on are really important to understanding them as people. It's always a good question to ask if you're doing some work with somebody. Is what makes him laugh? What, is it people falling over, going down ski slopes? Usually, yeah. The allowable weaknesses is a phrase I really like. Comes from management, but it's that sort of part of our strengths is also part of our weaknesses, aren't they? The sort of things that are part of us. And then some of the things that we find really, really hard. I'll give you some examples of those, of each one.
What is it you mean by the allowable?
Well, that's a question. I'm trying to think of the example. What example did I think of for that? Okay, so we were talking about somebody whose strength was that they were really, really sociable and they loved to party and they were brilliant fun to be with. All right? Anybody here a bit like that, or somebody else a bit? Yeah. Yeah. There's a few nods, but they don't want to admit it. But yeah, okay. So yeah, always happy if there's something going on, and it's right. Okay. The allowable weaknesses is for that person is actually there's sometimes where you just need to calm down a bit, and it's kind of a bit over the top and a bit noisy and a bit occasionally even a bit inappropriate, because now is not the time for it to have a party, all right? Or now's not the time to say, hey everybody, isn't this great? It's actually time to say, oh dear, this is a bit of a... Yeah, so, but that's, when you know someone, that's the sort of thing that you say, well, that's just part of them, isn't it? That, it goes with the great fun person that they are. So it's that sort of thing, it's that allowable weakness that we recognise. It's not always good, but it's not. Whereas it could be that for somebody like that, being in the quiet is actually really, really difficult. And people almost kind of get fearful of it and can't bear and just hate to be in the quiet. And will go out and find. And so some things for people that grow from their strengths, they have allowed, but some things are just really hard. Some very quiet people can find too much attention, and we'll talk about some of the things that we find difficult. Just so difficult that actually you can't be in them anymore, and you have to get out of them, and you'll do anything to get out of them. So it's that kind of thing. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Now these things, all right, are affected by the sort of environment that we're in. And in services and places like FiND and whatever. So I've got, here you go. So do they get water? Look, there you go. Does this get some water and some sunshine and the things that it needs to grow? All right? So the lack of that will make it very small and kind of limp and not very happy. Too much will then also make it go all brown and you get. It's really obvious, actually, isn't it? I shouldn't have bothered, should I? Anyway, so for people that we're thinking about, the sort of equivalent to the sunshine and the water and the food and the other people that are around, and where there are difficulties, the kind of work that we might, interventions are things that we decide to do. Okay, so-and-so is having a real problem with their anxiety, to the point that they can't go into that room, and if they do go into that room, then they hit somebody. All right. So what we decide what we're going to do about that. That's an intervention. We decide to do something, and obviously it needs to be a helpful one. It needs to be something that's useful. So that's the sort of environment that can then help that person grow and flourish. Yeah, makes sense. The opportunities that we provide for people. The opportunities to come here might be something that is really helpful. Maybe, for some people, the opportunity to move on and then go out into making a working environment or something like that. There are certainly some people here at FiND 3, I think, who at some point fairly soon would actually do well in a straightforward working environment with support from us. Have those opportunities to actually get out and meet people. Matthew's Hub, it strikes me, it's all about opportunities to meet and make friends and all that kind of thing. So what opportunities do we provide to help someone flourish? And then resources, what is available to people. And for many people, like transport, money, those sorts of things are really important. Transport is always an issue, isn't it? Always an issue. So what resources are we providing to make all that work? And those are the sorts of things, okay? So when we're working with people or trying to help people, we need to begin to understand each of those stages, yeah? We need to understand, firstly, what kind of person. What's about their relationships? What is it about their disability, if they have this word autism or whatever, and their community? What are their strengths? What makes them laugh? All those other sorts of things. And then what sorts of things can help them flourish and lead to the flower at the end? So here's what I've got a flower. Here we go. Ah, nice. Isn't that lovely? And the flower to make good relationships, to be... This is the group in Reading came up with this list, which I really quite liked. That they in that service are working towards good relationships, being healthy and safe, content and having fun, and busy and contributing, not just being busy, but actually doing something that helps other people and doing meaningful things. Giving back, being part of, not just receiving all the time. People with disabilities, they just receive all the time. Why does that? People want to give. We all want to give. It's human nature, fundamental. So that's the sort of way that we try to work, or might try to work, with somebody that's struggling with life because of their difference, which has led to a disability, which has then led to some difficulties for them. And then the last bit is that in the end it's not just, this is a bit corny this, but in the end, if you forgive me just for being a bit corny, but anyway, we aren't just flowers on our own, are we? Right? Okay? And so what we want is flowers that kind of work together. So you see you've got a bunch here, and of all different colours and they work together as a bunch, because that's actually a bit sad, sitting on its own watching telly, isn't it? I know some of you wish you were sitting on your own watching telly right now, but you're not yet, okay? We've all got to wait till maybe even the news later. But no, it is a bit sad. And actually lots of people who work with people actually work on how to make these bunches work. They call it systemic, but that's what it is. It's make the things work together and be together and complement each other. And each one is made so much better by being with the others. So, and I've got two of these because I think Sally and Gail out here need to be given these. That's all right. That's because Sally does so much to put together nights like this. She was on the email like 4 months ago, or whenever the last one was. And Gail's been busy at FiND all day, and also setting all this up for us. So they at very least deserve a bunch of flowers to support that. Okay, does that make sense as a way of understanding people? And that when hopefully when people that are working, but actually we can all do this. We can all understand these things and think about because everyone has got a different profile. If we could do this for everybody here. I won't do it for you now. It's all right. But we could do it for everybody here, and it would be different for everybody here. But it's no different to someone with a disability. It's not that only disabled people are like this. Everybody's like this. And this is a kind of way of working. So I did just want to tell you, how are we doing? Well, it can't be that longer. I'll just tell you very quickly about someone that I've been thinking about with this. This is a guy called Paul. His personality, he was a very fun, actually he reminded me, because he was a party bloke really. He was a very fun-loving person, but he's also really quite rigid. So he needs things to be as they are, and he doesn't like change, right? So he's kind of basically quite a rigid personality, but also a very fun-loving, party-going sort of personality. He has a very complex relationship with his mum. That's all I can say. But we do have sometimes complex relationships with our mums, don't we? Or our dads, or whoever. And he had a complex relationship with his mum, and we needed to understand that to help him. And even though he loved parties, his disability meant he was socially awkward, and he found it very hard to read what other people at the party, what was going on for them. And so he was kind of socially awkward and said things that upset people and so on, and ended up his community was actually a very poor one. It was a setting where he and his family had no money at all, and that was an issue for him. Issue around disability benefits, issue around loads of things. But poverty was an issue there, so that was kind of what we needed to understand initially about him. In terms of his strengths, he was a very caring person, actually. He says things like, "You look lovely today" to people, in a way, and he wanted to know they were all right as well. So he was a very caring person, very noisy, very mischievous, and the kind of noisy, full-on thing was part of his allowable weakness. The things he found really, really hard was relating to women. And the thing he most wanted in the world was a girlfriend. Okay, so that was the thing. And that's what we needed to work on. What he needed in his environment was, firstly, people that were really confident with him, and were able to explain to him when things weren't right. And the confidence especially was when things, because you remember I said he was quite rigid. So if things changed unexpectedly, he would really get very angry very quickly and break lots of things. He was in a secure service for a long time. This guy had really had a hard time. And if you weren't confident around the change, and kind of took him with you, then he got so anxious he would break the place up. So he needed that, and the staff needed to be skilled for that. The opportunities that he needed was to get out to meet people, because he never met anybody other than in his house where he lived, and professionals. So that was the opportunities that he needed. He's found a place to be at the moment where that's working really well, and he actually, the relationship that's made all the difference has been a friend that he's made in the place he goes during the day, funny enough. And this is a bloke, but they together, they are really funny together. They play off each other, and that has given him the confidence. And his friend and the people that are working with him that have got this confidence and are teaching him how to relate to people are slowly, and it's taking a while, teaching him to relate to women particularly, and to begin to go out to things and to meet people. And it's taking a long time. But he hasn't smashed anything up for over a year, which is fantastic. That is such an achievement. That is much more of an achievement than anything I've ever achieved, I tell you. Given where he's come from, I tell you, the complexity of his relationships at home. So, remarkable. And of course, the place he goes during the day is he's busy as well. So those are the sorts of things. So you can see how that picture built up, and the way that can work for people. So, again, just a quick, that was Paul, by the way. Look at that. Isn't that great? Just very quickly, have a chat to your neighbour about what makes you flourish. What makes you flourish? I love that word, flourish. Okay. Last bit. It's 8 o'clock now. Are we all right for another 10, 15 minutes? You sure? Yeah. Okay. If that's not okay, then do just kind of quietly move out or whatever. Finders doesn't finish till 8:30 at least, does it? So people are. Yeah. Good. Okay. What I want to do is just, when we use that kind of, call it a model, that like grid thing that we did. There are some questions that we kind of learned to ask, and we actually covered some of them last time, but I put them in a proper order. That these are questions that can be helpful, and in research and stuff they found might be helpful. And I want to give an example of one of them as well, if that works. So, if I'm overwhelmed by what's going on and everything's happening and it's just too much, I'm feeling too many demands on me. You know that feel, like when you come in and everything's going on and you just want to say, stop! That kind of feeling. Yeah, there's a few nods over there. Yes. yeah, absolutely. Or, actually, I am so bored, I've just got nothing. I would quite like that for a bit, but they tell me, actually, over time, it's awful. And when you're really bored, I remember a time when I was unemployed, and if I had something to do in the week, right, I would never do it on the Monday. I would plan it to do it like Thursday, Friday, because there was one thing that you wanted to do, So being that bored, it's an awful experience as well. So I don't know. So I need a couple of volunteers to illustrate. Some people like challenge. Who likes a bit of a challenge here? Yeah, come on then. Did you come up before? I think you did, didn't you? Can we have another person who hasn't been up before? Two of you. Come on, we've got one more person. Oh, we got someone out there. Right. You got a different challenge this time. No blindfolds, no, you're alright. I'm going to start with you. It's Kyle, okay?
Go on, then.
All right.
What do you want me to do?
How many cushions do you think you can carry on your head without them falling off?
One.
One? Let's see. Okay, do you want... Yeah, alright then. Let's see how we get on.
Right.
You okay?
Okay.
You get another one on? Oh, she's good, isn't she?
I'm nearly done.
Oh, and 3. Oh dear, yeah, three cushion woman, that's not bad, That is not bad, thank you. Right, do you reckon you can beat that?
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Sorry. I've got a big head, obviously, it's going to be fine.
Well, I was going to say, does it matter to you to beat that? Do you want to beat that? And it's quite clear you want to beat that, don't you?
No.
It's a challenge. It's a bit of a challenge. Do you want to do it yourself?
No, it's fine. You carry on.
You sure?
No, honestly.
All right then.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not going to be able to reach. All right. You're a tall person. You might have to help me. Oh, look at this. Look, 1, 2. Oh no, that wasn't fair. I don't think.
Oh, he's cheating.
Is it cheating? Yeah.
I'm trying to be helpful.
See what's going on
I'm trying to be helpful.
Now, children, play nicely. Oh, it's the same. It's the same.
It's the way people.
Yeah.
I thought so too.
Is there anybody here that really would hate to come up and do that? Or, yeah, there's some nods. It actually can't. It actually would hate to put up a hand and say, "I would hate to come up and do." Yeah, there's lots of nods there. Yeah, absolutely. We're all. Some people love a chat, happy to come up, happy to do things in front of people. Other people find that sort of thing just excruciating. So if we're doing a big activity with lots of disabled people, some people might not like that. Do you see what I mean? It's that sort of thing. These are the questions that we need to answer and to think about for people. How do I get we said this last time, I think. The people here generally can get attention just like that, in some way or other, without ending up being referred to a psychologist, can't we? But by and large, people here, if they want some attention, we can go and say hello to somebody, or we can do. That's not so easy for people always. That's not so easy for people. But the need for attention, everybody needs that sometimes, at the right amount for them. We all need that. It's quite a skill to get it, especially in a way that doesn't begin to wind other people up. But just, always worth remembering. And then those questions about being worried or anxious. What do I need? I'm sorry about that spelling at the end there, but it's we have these things that we need to just kind of keep the world at bay sometimes. Everybody does. It's fine. We just need to know what it is for people, and if they do. One guy I used to work with just needed a path in the garden that he could walk up to the shed and sit in his shed. And he didn't mind if it was cold. He really didn't mind. He wore a coat, he was fine if it was cold. He just needed to be able to walk up to the garden, sit in his shed for half an hour and walk back again. And some professional decided that he was going to get cold and it was not good for his health and stopped him doing it. And then there was a referral to me, because he knocked 7 bells out of this person and made that decision. I mean, really. We all have things we need to do. Let's work out what it is and help people do it. And if it is something that is damaging or difficult or dangerous, we gently find an alternative. But, some of us do difficult and dangerous and unhealthy and unhelpful things, don't we? Chocolate. Just saying. That's not dangerous. Well, it could be. The levels that some of us... Yeah, anyway. Okay, look at her. She's great. Now that is joy, isn't it? That is joy unconfined. Just some other questions. People go on about all long words and stuff like that, but again, if you're not sure as you're growing up if a person's there, if people are there for you, certainly in our work we come across quite a lot of people who've had that experience. And then it's hard to relate to people in the future because you're never quite sure. Or you saw people hurt other people, or you were hurt yourself, and we do come across that. And it's always that has something happened to you. What's happened to you? The user movement in mental health service, fantastic. You get a chance to, but the people that have used mental health services often say, don't ask me what's wrong with me, ask me what happened to me. And that's just worth remembering. And then this, am I beautiful? This question we talked about last time, this fundamental question that we all have. And we all struggle with the answer, even if it's yes, but even especially. And why am I different? And people do stare. And why do they stare? Why am I different to my brother and sister? And will I meet and fall in love? That's what this guy that I was talking about earlier wanted to know. He wanted to meet someone and fall in love. I was at a service, it was a long way away from here, the other day where this bloke was sitting, and this was his world. He wanted to meet somebody and fall in love with someone, and he wanted to get married. He talked about it all the time. It was a big issue. And he was with a bunch of staff. I have to say, that were sitting, they were talking about their families while they were supporting him. And you could just see his face drop, you know. And then later there was an incident. It was a really extreme service, this. But later there had to be an incident, really. We have those questions, and we've got to understand them and go with people. And go with people when the answer is maybe not, as it is for many people. Okay. So those are the sorts of questions that seem important around that kind of model thing that we looked at before. That's great. I've enjoyed the kind of supporter-carer faces as much as the, haven't you? Yeah, that's what. Yeah, and that takes us to the final bit, really. This is the central question, and this is in some ways a particularly difficult question, because we get to a point where maybe the love and support and care of our immediate family isn't enough. It can't be for us all, can it? Do you see what I mean? So one of the tasks of human life is to move to a place where there are other people, there are enough people. And those 4 words just come back to me again and again in my work anyway, about consistent and persistent. That makes sense. You know, people that will be there for you and will stay with you. Who know what they're doing, who know about some of these questions and some of these ways and some of these things, and some of these things about autism and Down syndrome and all that kind of stuff. And also have this confidence, this ability to kind of not be overwhelmed. This guy who was very violent, one of the things about the change thing is that if he sensed that you were uncertain, it made him uncertain. And then that made you more uncertain, and that made him more uncertain, and eventually there was only one way it could go. And you know, we've got to find ways of helping people that work with people maintain that confidence, because it's a tough old job sometimes. And do they care? And are they excited about seeing me? There's a wonderful book which it's a kind of love story, but what it talks about is where it's at the end is where there's somebody waiting outside a prison for somebody to come out of the prison. They waited outside every day for like years and years and years. And at the end of this book, they say that's what love was about. That love was about waiting for the person. And it's that, you know, wanting to see and waiting to see and wait for you is a sort of, it's good for everybody. So that's the answer. Relationships in the end. Those people who are consistent and persistent. All the other stuff we can teach and we can, but without this is the core of helping people who struggle. Always. And the techniques and the diagnoses or the this, that and the other, they can go on top, but this is what it's about. This is always what it's about. And certainly in my experience. And actually, when you do they call it a meta-review, when you look at all of the bits of research about something, this is the stuff that comes out. In every field. Funnily enough, whether it's in work or anything else. Education. It's the same in education. It's not the teaching technique you use to teach people to read. It's whether they really get excited about you teaching them to read. Oh, she's not sure about that. Anyway, that's we've come a long journey, and we'll stop there. But hopefully, that's just put a little more flesh on the bones of some ideas about the differences between us and the ways that we might understand those differences to work with people, especially when those people are struggling. I've emailed these to Louise already, so if anybody wants copies of these slides, do. And also, just get in touch through FiND if you want to ask anything or anything like that, or you're concerned about anything. I'm always happy to respond. One of my jobs in life is to try to make sense of some of these things to more people, because the experts and the researchers and the professionals have no right to stick it behind these long words and stuff. They've no right to do that. So do always get in touch. Okay. So thank you very much.